there are only, I counted, 6 Saturdays remaining in this regular season.
Ooh.
Tomorrow, lots of fun matchups. We're going to pick some of them in the Final Four in one. But I want to start with Gonzaga, Kentucky. It's a rare February non-league game between two big brands. Tip is scheduled Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it on CBS. It's America's most watched network. It's the network of stars. Gonzaga needs the win to start building an at-large resume to match its still mostly strong computer numbers. Kentucky needs the win probably to remain ranked in Monday's AP poll and to avoid losing for what would be the 4th time in a 6-game span and for what would be the 2nd time in a 4-game span to an unranked opponent at home. Deadleg, first question. Who needs it more, Kentucky or Gonzaga?
Second question. This is the poll question right now. We'll give you the update later in the show. Will Gonzaga make the 2024 NCAA tournament? I'll ask you to answer that in just a couple minutes here. Who needs it more? I believe Gonzaga needs it more by the pure basis of why I just brought up the other question. Kentucky's going to the NCAA tournament. Now, its seed situation has been slippery as of late, but Gonzaga, in my estimation, has zero chance at an at-large bid if it does not go on the road and beat Kentucky in this game. If that were to happen, then it would be looking at 3 quad 1 opportunities remaining. I think I talked about this in the last show, maybe. If it lost to Kentucky, it would still have a quad 1 at San Francisco, would have a quad 1 at St. Mary's, and then theoretically would have a quad 1 in the WCC semis. But if you brought that scenario into play where it doesn't get the automatic bid, 3 quad 1 wins against let's see, that would likely be right now. Gonzaga's numbers are, I've got them here. Their Q1 record is 0-5. So 0-6, 3-6, 3-7 in quad 1 because they would lose the WCC championship game in that scenario. I don't think that would be enough. They'd actually be under 500 most likely, or 500 at best in the top 2 quadrants in that situation. Right now, Gonzaga 17-6. Best wins are against San Francisco. Per the net, by the way, the best wins right now are San Francisco, Syracuse, and USC, the only 3 top 100 wins in the net that Gonzaga has, and San Francisco sits at 64th. Worst losses are at Santa Clara, at Washington, at San Diego State. So the losses aren't atrocious for the most part, but the resume just doesn't have enough right now. So Gonzaga, in my estimation, needs it more. 1, do you agree with me? 2, to the question that's currently in the poll in the live chat, feel free to vote if you're watching, obviously. Will Gonzaga make the 2024 NCAA tournament, Gary Parrish, yes or no?
I'm going to say no.
Okay, so you got them no at large, and you got them losing either in the title game or the semis.
I mean, what have we seen in this season to make you say yes?
On the same token, you have said yes to Michigan State. Have you seen enough from them to make you say yes? Do you not trust Tom? This isn't even a snarky question. It's genuine question. Do you not trust Mark Few on the same level that you trust Tom Izzo?
I don't even think about it in those terms. I simply think about it in these terms. Michigan State has shown an ability, not often, but an ability to beat a good team to win a big game. They can do that. All right. And the rest of the schedule is favorable, but also filled with opportunities to enhance the resume. So if I'm betting on Michigan State to get there right now, I'm not betting on them to win the Big Ten tournament. I'm betting on them to get an at-large, and I'm betting on them to do well against a favorable schedule going forward. As always, we'll see. Mm-hmm. Gonzaga hasn't beat anybody any good this season. They have 0 wins over likely NCAA tournament teams, unless you want to correct me. I missed something. Right?
The only one that might qualify for, and barely here, they have a home win over Yale, and Yale might well be a quality Ivy League team that gets in the tournament. But that's not an at-large candidate at this point. So to your point, that is accurate at this stage.
Yeah. So I don't think they're going to build an at-large resume. And then I just watched St. Mary's beat them at home. I will say, Gonzaga clearly has a better shot to win an automatic bid than Michigan State would have to win an automatic bid. So that's got to be factored in there somewhere. And maybe that closes the gap a little bit if you're picking between the two. But I think Michigan State still has a chance to secure an at-large resume. And I just don't think Gonzaga is going to be able to get there. Like, what you're asking me to believe is that they're going to go to Rupp Arena this weekend and win. And I'll give them a shot just because Kentucky has, been struggling lately, especially on the defensive end. But, spoiler alert, I'll probably pick Kentucky in the Final Four and 1. And that means that I think Gonzaga is going to be 0-6 in quadrant 1 by the time we go to bed on Saturday night. And then it's going to I agree with you. Mostly come down to, and if not entirely come down to, can they win the automatic bid? I think they can, but I at this point, I don't think they will.
I will lean. I'll answer the question here too. I'm going to say that Gonzaga gets in via the automatic bid, wins the WCC championship, and gets in that way. This was the case. I think I'm bringing it back right now. The year Gonzaga made the Sweet 16, I saw them in Chicago that year. They won the WCC tournament, and they got the auto bid. They were in 11. So I guess in retrospect, maybe you have to look back. It's conceivable they could have missed out on the tournament had they not got the auto bid. So the program under Mark Few has been in this situation. Mm-hmm. It's just not that common. That 15-16 team had a neutral court win over UConn that season. UConn was a top 30 KenPom team. UConn was a 9 seed in the tournament. So that team had a win early on against a quality NCAA tournament level team. It was really the only one. In addition, that season, they got swept by St. Mary's. So that's a relatively recent instance where this has happened, Parrish. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen a lot. In 2011, Gonzaga was a 24-9 team after winning the WCC championship. And that season, it went to the tournament as an 11 as well. So we've had, and then go back to the early 2000s, they had 1 or 2 instances as well. So Mark Few has been I'm bringing these up because Few has been in this position before. It's just been a little bit of a while here. And frankly, that 2016 Sweet 16 run, which started the current streak that Gonzaga's at, where it's made 8-9 in a row of the second weekend. That's one of the longest streaks ever, obviously, and by far the current longest active one. He's been in this spot before. Brian Hamilton of The Athletic recently took a trip out to Spokane, wrote a piece on Gonzaga being in this situation, period. And Few spoke to that a little bit as well, talked about how the fan base, understandably, has gotten a little spoiled here. So I don't think he's pressing. That said, this is a huge, huge opportunity here. And I love that we're opening the show here on Friday morning talking about this game because it's just the third time these schools have met. They're in the game 2 of a 6-game series. Gonzaga won last season. It's 1-1 all time. Kentucky won when they met back in 2008. Gonzaga's right now starting a stretch where we'll play 3 out of its next 4 on the road. And I got a couple of notes and thoughts on actually how I think the game will play out. But I do want to at least bring this up, what GP mentioned in his read off the top there. I very much love and enjoy, and I hope that the people watching the pod, listen to the show, college hoops fans, I hope you're like me in that this is a refreshing thing on this weekend. Saturday is a pretty solid slate all around. It's got really nice, just like last week, and a lot of the stuff that's watchable, it's staggered. So you're going to have stuff from noon all the way deep into midnight Eastern, which is great. It's breaking down finally. But to me, the fact that we've got a non-conference game between 2 big-time schools in an urgent situation, this was commonplace in college basketball for decades, 60s, 70s, 80s. Obviously, remember it in the 90s, and even into the 2000s. This was commonplace to get scheduling where coaches intentionally wanted to break up their league schedules by playing a notable opponent in February for not just the purpose of getting out of league play and maybe getting a little bit of a different look from a different team, but also getting a high-profile opponent that at the time, for a good while there, coaches thought that a win over a non-conference opponent could actually inflate and help their seeding or their situation with getting into the tournament. We've moved away, if you're wondering, well, why have we moved away from it? Unfortunately, because conference this really lines up, if not year for year, it's about the same with the 2010, 2011, 2012 conference realignment that we went through then, where you had Missouri's going to the SEC and Maryland going to the Big Ten, and just all that stuff, all that movement, inflated leagues. It created 18-game schedules and now 20-game schedules, and now leagues are even bigger. So the inventory is not really available. Calipari, credit to him, because Few has the flexibility with the WCC schedule to make this happen, to get the space, to get the real estate, and to get this game done in non-league play in February. I think it's awesome because, frankly, I expected when this 6-game series was announced that all these games would be either in November or December. If Gonzaga and Kentucky can manage to do this more times than not over the next 4 meetings, I think it would be wonderful because it is a throwback and we don't get it a lot. And frankly, we're almost never going to get it. You might almost have to have Gonzaga specifically, so long as it's still in WCC, involved in a game like this because it would take moving mountains at this point. And it really is a bummer. Like, it's not the worst thing, obviously, but it's a bummer that we don't get this anymore. Like, you used to get like UNLV versus Arkansas on like the first February of the season there. And that was good stuff. It was good for the sport. This is not a standalone, but is a primetime big stage spotlight game, GP. And I love the fact that we're getting it. I thought we'd be getting it under circumstances where these teams were even a bit more comfortable than they are. But the fact that they're not makes it that much more urgent. And I appreciate it that much more.
Evidence that it's possible to do stuff like this is the fact that we have this game this weekend. It can be done. You just have to make it happen. I'm not anticipating this will happen. I would like it if people would just think bigger and like more broadly about what's good for the sport. If 3 or 4 of the best leagues in the country, or 30 of the best teams in the country all said, hey, let's pick out a weekend in February where and we got to coordinate it with our leagues, but we're going to have that Saturday off. We're going to have that weekend off, and we're going to schedule a non-league game against another quality team. Like look, I'm fired up for Kansas Baylor. League games are fun too, but I like just getting something a little different so deep into the calendar. John and Mark used to do this at Gonzaga Memphis,
right? When
they both had sort of similar motivations. They were both running through their leagues, Gonzaga, WCC, Memphis, CUSA, and then they could get together in January or February and test each other, launch themselves back onto the national radar. And I think both programs benefited from that. Obviously, the Kentucky doesn't need that, like Memphis needed it in that moment. But I do like that John and Mark have agreed to do this game in February. Circling back, I agree with you. I think Gonzaga needs it more for all the reasons we laid out. Kentucky does need it, though, because
I know. Oh, I'm aware.
It's the fans they just make it. And I'm not even blaming like the fans, like, oh, those crazy fans. I'm like, they're understandably frustrated.
Yeah.
Kentucky right now is 2-4 in quadrant 1, 3-1 in quadrant 2, 5-5 in the first 2 quadrants with a Q3 loss to Wilmington. I honestly don't know why Kentucky is ranked 17th in the AP poll, other than it's the AP poll. You can't find a single computer number that will support that. The resume does not support that. They're outside of the top 20 in every notable computer. Their strength of record is 33rd. Do you realize Gonzaga is actually higher in KenPom right now than Kentucky?
Yeah.
Gonzaga's 22nd, UK's 24th. And that's among the reasons KenPom only projects Kentucky to be a 3-point favorite at home. I imagine the number will be a little bigger, but that is what KenPom is projecting right now. John Calipari has pivoted a little bit from we've got to be better defensively to we just got to get a little better defensively. He's sort of like, moved the goalpost a little bit, which here's what he said. I'm paraphrasing. Tell me what you make of this. Because right now, as you know, you've detailed it, Kentucky is excellent offensively. They really can score, but they're 102nd in adjusted defensive efficiency, according to KenPom. Bad defensive team. So John's new point is like, hey, we don't have to, go be classic Virginia on the defensive end of the court. We just have to be a little bit better. We just have to be okay defensively. Like, just get 5 more stops in a 40-minute game against Tennessee and you can win it. Just get 2 more stops in a 45-minute game against Florida and you can win it. Do you buy that?
Not that simplistic. Now, he might think that because he's, living through every possession. I think it's got to be a little bit more pronounced. How about this? It's got to be a little bit more pronounced than that. Particularly against the good teams, because I've seen it now too often, and the efficiency it's going in the wrong direction. So I think it's got to be more than a little bit. It's not going to be a wholesale change. Kentucky fans, I think, at this point would accept the fact that it is very rare. Not to say that it's never happened, but it's not common for a team to get to basically this point in the season and show you that it is a pedestrian team defensively, and to change that, not even to being elite, but being aggressively different and much better. It very rarely happens. We have so many games in. Now, teams can get to this point in the season, be pedestrian, and bump themselves up maybe a stage or two. And I think that can be the case with Kentucky. But it would be really something remarkable if Calipari could actually get this team. And by the sounds of it, he's just not. He knows that's not going to be the case. And so I don't think the difference between them getting back on track and suddenly winning the SEC is just being one play here, one play there. I personally don't think it's that. I think it's a little bit more detailed than that. But take the steps when you can get them, and if those steps are all that you need in this kind of game against Gonzaga, that particularly because it's Gonzaga and Gonzaga's on the road, it should be able to allow you to get there. I know you've got a thought to continue with, but I will note this: Kentucky leads the country in points per game, 89.5. It's had how many games here has it had above 90 points? Because it is rolling. It's had 13 games over 90 points this season. That's the most in the country. Arizona has 11. Bama has 10. Indiana State has 10. Everyone else has 9 or fewer. Kentucky with 13 games of 90 or more. Gonzaga has been in that category many seasons recently, but it has not been that way this season. It has hit 90 or more a few times, but it has been mostly against bad teams. Pine Bluff, among the bottom 20 in the sport. Jackson State, hovering around 300 in Ken Palm. San Diego is actually a quality team, and Gonzaga did drop 101 on them, 100 plus twice. But it's not offensively what it's been. And I'm curious in this game if Gonzaga and Kentucky gets into a race to 90 and what that looks like for either team, because that has benefited Kentucky a lot. And maybe it will in this one because Gonzaga doesn't have that hammer home offensive guy. Watson's been good. It is intriguing. So a little bit of a long-winded answer to your question, GP, but particularly with the defense in this game, and will Kentucky want to be in another race to 90? Is Gonzaga the right opponent to choose to do that against?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that if Gonzaga is going to go on the road and upset Kentucky, they're going to have to score. Like, this ain't going to be one you go on the road and you win it 68-65. Like, you're going to have to go score. And Gonzaga is coming off of a game where they just scored 96. Now, it was 96 against Portland at home. That's different than trying to get 96 against Kentucky at Rupp. I think. We'll see. But I don't know if you watched any of the game Gonzaga Portland the other night. It was a blowout.
It was a blowout. It was on CBS Sports Network.
Right.
I checked in a little bit. It wasn't even close. Portland is 9-16, folks.
Right. So John Rothstein was there on the sideline, and it was hilarious. Did you notice what was happening?
I actually no, I did not. Okay. I quad boxed at YouTube TV, but I did not have money on.
So it's sort of like inside baseball stuff. The reason I'm home this week, we didn't have studios in New York this week.
So I know, and they shipped them all the way out to a Portland Gonzaga game.
But do you know why they did that? I mean, I haven't talked to anybody about this.
I don't.
With Rothstein, but like, we might need you to fill until we can get to like 10 o'clock window.
Oh, I noticed this. Are you talking about post-game? It was the longest post-game interview that's ever happened. He did Few, and then he did Watson, then he did Braden Huff. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, the game went like an hour 40. Rothstein had to fill 20 minutes.
I didn't know if it was that long. I did notice. I noticed that he, because I brought up the sound because I was like, hey, let's see what Rothstein's got to ask Few here, and he had some good questions. And then they brought in Anton Watson, and then I switched to another game, and then I was like, they got now he's doing Braden Huff, and like the building has cleared out behind him. There's no one, and I was like, what's going? And then I noticed, this is kind of inside baseball stuff, but then I noticed that they threw it out to the Bellagio where the sets are for the Super Bowl, and Zucker was hosting all. So that was a funny moment, and he was just he was feeling time. By the way, Braden Huff had 25. Yeah. He might be a factor in this Kentucky. So I did pick up on that. Yeah.
I was texting Rothstein the whole time. I was like, keep going. You got to get us to 10 o'clock, whatever time it was.
Yeah.
So that was, again, inside baseball, but he had to, so it was a long post game. And among the things he asked Mark about, this game against Kentucky was like, what do you have to do to go win one on the road, in a place like Rupp Arena? He said, shooting the ball the way we just shot the ball would help, because Gonzaga was 15 of 33 from three. That's 45.5%. I don't know. They got to go 15 to 33 from three, but they're going to have to shoot it like that to go into Rupp and win. They're going to have to go score points. And also, Mark did point out to Rothstein something that you noted earlier, which is we've been here before. Everybody's freaking out, but we've been here before. He seemed more at ease about the current state of things with the Zags than I am, because although I just predicted, I don't think they're going to get to the NCAA tournament based on what I've seen this season. I want them to. One of my favorite ideas is that Mark Few could maybe retire someday without ever having missed the NCAA tournament. Like, that streak is intact right now. And so I'm rooting like crazy for the Zags, not necessarily at Kentucky. Don't put that on a message board, but just broadly speaking, to be in the NCAA tournament. I like that streak existing, but just to bottom line it, I think you're right. They probably do need to go win at Kentucky this weekend. And despite what we've seen recently, that's a big ask. One last thing on the Kentucky defense, then we'll move on.
Okay.
I don't know if it's true that if we just get a couple more stops a game, everything will be fine. I agree with you. It's a little more complicated than that. I still like that John is framing that. He's very good about these types of things. And I think sometimes when something seems like such a big task, if you can make it smaller and make it seem more manageable, it makes it easier to wrap your head around it. Perhaps poor analogy, but imagine you ain't put up laundry in 3 weeks and now you just got a big pile of clothes. Every day you look at it and it's like, I don't even know how I can get that back to where it needs to be. It seems impossible. But if somebody says, hey, can you just go in there, just get the towels? Can you just get the towels, fold them, put them in the closet? Then everything will be better. You're like, okay, I'd knock out the towels real quick. That's not a big deal. I'll do that. It feels a little more manageable. So John stopped trying to tell his players, we've got to do this. We've got to do that. We can't make this mistake. We can't. It's like, all right, because clearly that's not working. They are what they are. But if you can tell them, hey, we don't have to be a million different things differently. Let's just get just a little bit. Right now we're getting X amount of stops per game. Can we get 5 more? If we can get 5 more, we can win these games. And then we'll be on our track to wherever we're going. I don't know if it's an accurate representation of reality, but I do think it's smart to try to frame things differently for your players, because clearly what they had been doing up until this point, it hasn't worked.
I got a note on this game, but I'm going to save it because we are picking this in the Final Four and 1. Results of the poll to this point in the show. Will Gonzaga make the 2024 NCAA tournament? Get in by any means necessary, at large or automatic bid. Right now, no leads the poll. No, 55%. Yes, 45%. Would be the first time, obviously, in a generation. We'll pick this game in just a little bit.